The May sun blazed down on Stanford University's graduation ceremony as the stadium filled with 23,000 people. I sat among a sea of red caps and gowns, finally completing my computer science PhD after 6 intense years. Around me, classmates were snapping selfies and texting family, their faces beaming with joy and relief. I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from my parents, but no congratulations. Instead, there was a single text from my dad that made my stomach twist. "Your mother and I have talked it over. After today, don't expect any more financial help. You're 28, and it's time you stand on your own. We're cutting you off, effective immediately." I stared at the message, a mix of hurt and frustration settling in. Even on my graduation day, a moment that should have been about celebrating my success, Dad found a way to remind me of how much of a failure I was in his eyes. The truth was, I hadn't asked for their help in over 4 years. I had been getting by with research assistantships, teaching jobs, and what my dad called my computer hobby. But in his eyes, I was still the irresponsible child in need of constant financial reminders. "Are you okay?" whispered Jessica, the friend sitting next to me. "You look like you just got bad news." I showed her the text. Her eyes widened. "On your graduation day? Seriously, what kind of parents do that?" "The kind who think I'm wasting my life," I murmured. According to my dad, getting a PhD in computer science is just an excuse to avoid a real job for 6 more years. Jessica shook her head, disbelief clear in her face. All around us, families cheered and took pictures as graduates crossed the stage. Parents in the stands were smiling with pride as their children received their diplomas. My parents were somewhere in the crowd, but more focused on teaching me life lessons than celebrating my achievement. My phone buzzed again with another text, this time from my mom. "Your father is right, Alexandra. It's time to grow up and face the real world. We won't be bailing you out anymore." Bailing me out? I thought. I hadn't asked them for money since my sophomore year of undergrad. In fact, I'd been sending them money whenever I knew they were struggling, small amounts disguised as gifts or loans that I told them not to worry about repaying. "Dr. Alexandra Bennett," the announcer called, pulling me back to the present. It was my turn to walk across the stage. I stood up in a daze, walked up the platform, shook hands with the dean, and accepted my diploma. This PhD, earned after countless 60-hour weeks, all the research cited in papers, the algorithms used by top tech companies. It all felt less meaningful with my parents' messages hanging over me. As I walked back to my seat, my phone rang. The caller ID showed David Chin, CFO of Spectrum Analytics. I almost ignored it, but I knew David wouldn't call unless it was urgent. "David, I'm literally at graduation," I whispered when I picked up. "Sorry to interrupt, Alex," he said, his voice practically vibrating with excitement. "But I have news that can't wait. The IPO launched 15 minutes ago." My heart raced. We'd been preparing for the IPO for 8 months, but the final approval had just come through last week. I'd been so focused on my dissertation that I had almost forgotten today was launch day. "How's it going?" I asked, though his voice already hinted at good news. "We priced at $28 per share, which was above our target range," he said. "But the market response..." He paused for effect. "We opened at $47, and we're currently trading at $52. The company's valued at $6.2 billion. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. $6.2 billion. I own 73% of Spectrum Analytics, which meant, "Alex, are you there?" David asked. "You just became a billionaire. A multi-billionaire." I was so stunned that I forgot to lower my voice. "Are you serious? $6.2 billion? Several graduates around me turned their heads to look. Jessica's eyes grew wide with astonishment. "Are you serious? The Wall Street Journal is calling this the biggest tech IPO in 5 years. CNBC wants an interview with you this afternoon. Bloomberg is featuring you as the youngest female billionaire in tech," she exclaimed. I was struggling to comprehend the news when I realized more people around me had started paying attention. The words billion and IPO seemed to cut through the noise of the graduation ceremony. "David, I'm surrounded by people. Can we talk later?" I said, trying to manage the flood of emotions. Of course, but listen, Alex, there's one more thing. Goldman Sachs is predicting that the stock will hit $65 by the end of the week. If they're right, that's a $7.8 billion valuation. David's voice crackled through the phone. I felt my hands trembling as I hung up. Jessica grabbed my arm, wide-eyed. Did he just say billion with a B? She asked. I nodded, still stunned. Around us, whispers spread quickly, and the shock was palpable. That's when I saw my parents making their way down the stadium steps toward the graduate section. Mom was clutching her purse tightly, a stern look on her face as if preparing for another lecture. Dad was engrossed in his phone, likely drafting another message about my financial irresponsibility. Just as they neared the graduate seating area, my phone rang again. This time it was Maria Santos, our head of public relations. Alex, congratulations. The IPO is already making headlines. I've got interview requests from all the major business publications. The Today Show wants you tomorrow morning, and Fortune is rushing a cover story. Spectrum Analytics is already being called the next Google. Your facial recognition software is going to change everything, from security to social media. The Pentagon contract alone is worth $400 million. I could see my parents now just steps away, pushing through the crowd of graduates and families. I wanted to avoid the confrontation, but something in me, something that had been dismissed and criticized for years, wanted them to hear this. Maria, can you repeat that? I just want to be sure I'm hearing this correctly, I said, deciding to put the call on speaker. Maria continued, Spectrum Analytics went public this morning at a $6.2 billion valuation. With your 73% stake, you're worth about $4.5 billion. The Pentagon contract is worth $400 million. Microsoft just licensed your technology for $200 million. And we've got pending deals with Apple, Amazon, and Facebook. The facial recognition algorithms you developed are being hailed as a breakthrough in artificial intelligence. MIT has offered you a full professorship, and the National Science Foundation wants to fund your next research project with a $50 million grant. The nearby graduates had gone completely quiet. Even the families around us had stopped talking, listening intently to the surreal conversation happening right there in the middle of a graduation ceremony. As Maria wrapped up, she added, Alex, you're about to become one of the most famous entrepreneurs in America. Your story is already trending everywhere. Stanford PhD student becomes billionaire on graduation day. It's the top headline on every business website. I could see my dad, who had gone pale, drop the phone from his hand. It clattered onto the concrete steps. Maria wasn't finished yet. Oh, and by the way, the university is planning to name the new computer science building after you. The $100 million donation you committed will fund scholarships for underprivileged students for the next 50 years. Mom made a small, almost inaudible sound. I quickly responded, Maria, thank you for the update. Let's arrange a proper meeting tomorrow to discuss media strategy. Absolutely, Alex, congratulations. You've achieved something extraordinary. I hung up the phone and glanced at my parents, still standing frozen in the aisle as if time had stopped. My father's jaw hung open, while my mother gripped her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I said softly, breaking the silence. I saw your text about not expecting any help from me anymore. The ceremony continued around us, but our little corner had become its own bubble of stunned quiet. The other families, sensing something was amiss, began to stare as the realization of a family drama involving a billionaire unfolded before their eyes. Alexandra, my dad finally whispered, struggling to process what he'd just heard. What just happened? I became a billionaire, I replied simply, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The company I started went public today. Spectrum Analytics specializes in AI for facial recognition, security systems, and social media platforms. But you're still a student, my mom said in disbelief. You're supposed to be getting your PhD in computer science. I'm doing both, I answered, keeping my voice steady. I founded Spectrum Analytics in my second year of grad school. We started with a $50,000 grant, and the technology one developed for my dissertation became the foundation of our products. My sister, Jessica, leaned in. Alex, you never told us you owned a company. I don't really talk about it, I said. I focused on my research, letting the business team take care of operations. But we've been growing steadily for the last 4 years. We now have offices in Silicon Valley, Austin, and Boston with around 300 employees. Dad sank down onto the concrete steps, his face pale with shock. 300 employees as of last month. I continued. Yes, we've been hiring fast to keep up with the demand. The AI revolution is happening faster than anyone expected, and our algorithms are considered industry leaders. I pulled out my phone and showed them the Spectrum Analytics website, where a banner proudly announced our IPO success. The Pentagon contract Maria mentioned is for our next-gen security systems. The deal with Microsoft is integrating our technology into their cloud services, and the university partnerships will fund research labs at Stanford, MIT, and Carnegie Mellon. Finally, my mom found her voice. Alexandra, if you've got all this money and success, why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were struggling financially? It was the question I'd dreaded. I looked at the 2 people who'd raised me, who'd supported me through undergrad, but then spent the last 6 years making me feel like a failure for pursuing grad school. Because every time I tried to share my progress, you dismissed it as pointless, I said, my tone gentle. Do you remember that Christmas dinner 2 years ago when I tried to explain machine learning algorithms? Dad told me to stop talking nonsense and focus on finding a husband. Dad winced. Or when I told you that your research was just a fantasy, and that you needed to get ready for the real job market? My mom's voice cracked as she spoke. Tears welled in her eyes, and I continued. I stopped trying to share my achievements because you had already decided I was unrealistic and irresponsible. It was easier to let you believe what you wanted rather than constantly defending myself. At that moment, a graduate sitting behind me tapped my shoulder. Are you really worth $4.5 billion? He asked. I nodded, a little stunned. Yes, as of about 20 minutes ago. Wow, dude, you're famous, he said. Your IPO's all over Twitter. They're calling you the youngest self-made female billionaire in tech history. More people around us pulled out their phones, probably searching my name, and finding the articles already being published. I could see the exact moment when the realization hit. They were sitting next to someone who had just made history. But in that moment, all I cared about were the 2 people standing in front of me. Their worldviews shattered. Dad, I said quietly, you texted me this morning telling me I need to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. For the past 4 years, I've been standing on my own. Running a company, leading a team, securing contracts with some of the world's largest tech firms, and pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence. I stood up, my graduation gown billowing as I looked at my parents. You told me I was wasting my time getting a PhD instead of getting a real job. This isn't just a PhD, I said. It's the foundation of a technology that will revolutionize the way computers interact with the world. The work I've been doing is no longer theoretical. It's being used by companies with billions of users. The ceremony was still ongoing, but now more people were paying attention to our conversation, some recording with their phones, probably planning to share this moment on social media. I continued, you said not to expect any help from you anymore. That's fine, because I haven't needed your help in years. In fact, I've been helping you. I pulled up my banking app and showed them transactions from the past 2 years. The gift card that paid for Mom's car repairs last year, me. The scholarship that covered cousin Emma's tuition, through the Spectrum Analytics Educational Foundation, which I personally fund. The anonymous donation that helped Dad's bowling league get new equipment, again me. Dad stared at the screen, his face shifting through emotions I couldn't read. I've been taking care of this family quietly for years, I said. Not because you asked me to, but because I love you. Because even though you've been critical of my choices, you're still my parents. Mom began crying. We didn't know, Alexandra. We thought you were struggling. We thought we were helping by pushing you to be more realistic. I understood why they were worried, but they never asked about my reality. They assumed I was failing because my path didn't fit the mold they expected for success. A reporter had somehow found her way into the graduation section with a camera crew, and I realized our conversation was about to become very public. Mom, Dad, we need to finish this conversation somewhere private. I think we're about to be surrounded by the media. Dad scanned the area and saw the phones recording and the news crew approaching. Alexandra, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. We owe you an apology. Before we could respond, the reporter reached us, and security began clearing the area. Alexandra Bennett, I'm Jennifer Walsh from CNBC. Congratulations on the IPO success. How does it feel to become a billionaire on your graduation day? Cameras were rolling, and people were watching. My parents were standing there, looking completely overwhelmed. It feels surreal, I said honestly. 6 years ago, I came to Stanford to pursue research in AI. I never thought it would lead to this kind of success. What's next for Spectrum Analytics? We'll continue partnering with universities and expanding in ethical AI development. The goal has always been to create technology that benefits society, not just generate profits. The reporter asked more questions, but security moved us to a quieter area. Once we were away from the cameras, Dad spoke again. Alexandra, I'm proud of you. I'm ashamed of not seeing what you were building. No, I interrupted. Let me say this. I thought I was protecting you by pushing you toward what I saw as stability, but you were already building something more stable than anything I imagined. You were building the future. We reached a quiet spot under some trees. I'm sorry, Dad continued, for the text this morning, for making you feel like your dreams weren't valid, and for not trusting you to know what was best for your life. Mom stepped forward, pulling me into a tight hug. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to hide your success from us. I looked at her. You didn't have to hide it. I chose to because I wanted to focus on the work, not the money. But I should have tried harder to help you understand. Dad nodded. What you were doing was changing the world. We were too focused on conventional success to see it. My phone buzzed with a call from David. I need to take this, I said. David, what's the update? Alex, we just crossed $7 billion in market cap. And there's something else. Goldman Sachs wants to discuss a secondary offering that could value the company at $10 billion within 6 months. I looked at my parents, who seemed stunned. Oh, and the White House just called. They want to discuss you joining a presidential advisory committee on AI and national competitiveness. The White House. I repeated. The president personally requested you for the committee. Your work is seen as critical for maintaining America's tech leadership. I ended the call and turned to my parents, who were struggling to take in the news. I guess I should update my resume, I said with a smile. Dad laughed for the first time since we arrived. Actually, I think your resume is probably fine, he joked. But Alexandra, I want you to know that whether you're worth $4 or $4 billion, you're still my daughter. And I love you. I love you too, Dad, I replied. Both of you. Despite everything, I'm glad you're here for my graduation. We wouldn't have missed it for the world, Mom said. Even if we didn't fully understand what today really meant. As we walked back toward the ceremony, I realized that becoming a billionaire wasn't the most important thing that had happened that day. The most important thing was that my parents finally understood who I was. Despite years of misunderstandings, our family was still intact. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Jessica. Your IPO is the top trending topic on Twitter. Also, can I get your autograph? I want to tell people I graduated with a billionaire. I laughed and showed the text to my parents. I guess our daughter is famous now, Mom said. She always was, Dad replied. We just didn't know it yet. That evening, as I sat in my small apartment, one I'd likely be moving out of soon, I reflected on how much my life had changed. I had graduated, become a billionaire, and gained international recognition. But most importantly, I had reconnected with my parents in a meaningful way. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, interview requests, congratulations, and investment opportunities. But the text that meant the most came from Dad. Proud of you, kiddo. Always have been, even when I was too stubborn to show it. Tomorrow, I'd navigate life as a public figure and a billionaire entrepreneur. But tonight, I was just Alexandra, a daughter who had finally proven to her parents that her dreams were worth pursuing, even when they didn't understand.